Welcome back to my channel, a channel that discusses very dramatic movie stories, guys. In this video, I'll take you to watch a very dramatic movie about this story, entitled The Magnificent Bodyguard. Before this story begins, don't forget to hit subscribe and like. Instead of just being curious, let's continue watching this video until the end, okay?
The legend of Caspian Williams was written in the blood and shadows of the world's most dangerous conflict zones, earning him a reputation as quite possibly the most lethal elite soldier the world had ever seen. Despite his unparalleled combat skills and a chest full of medals, Caspian was a man haunted by the mystery of his own origin, a past shrouded in secrecy and the unanswered questions about the fate of his parents. His superior officer, a man who had known him for years, finally offered him the key to the truth, a USB drive containing all the answers Caspian had ever sought. However, the password to the digital vault was the prize for one final, high-stakes mission. Caspian was tasked with protecting a high-value target Fei Pei named Chloe Brooks, the brilliant and influential CEO of Storm Pharmaceuticals. Little did he know that this mission would plunge him into a web of corporate espionage, poisonous family legacies, and a miracle drug that could change the face of human medicine forever. Chloe Brooks had recently shocked the global medical community by announcing the breakthrough of Dana, a man-made miracle drug designed to stop the spread of cancer and raise recovery rates to a staggering 99%. This discovery made her the most sought-after and endangered woman in the city, drawing the predatory eyes of the powerful Jones family. The clash began when Caspian, even before officially taking the job, encountered Chloe and her sister, Iris, at a high-end lounge where they were being harassed by Damian Jones. The arrogant heir had drugged the sisters, intending to kidnap them to a private suite to force a marriage that would hand over the formula for Dana to his empire. Caspian intervened with a ferocity that left Damian's thugs broken on the floor. In the chaotic, drug-induced aftermath, Chloe sought refuge in Caspian's arms at a hotel, an intimate encounter that neither expected but would irrevocably bind their destinies. The aftermath of that night brought a cold, professional tension to the halls of Storm Pharmaceuticals. Chloe, fearing a scandal and unsure of Caspian's true motives, attempted to buy his silence with a $1 million bribe. To her surprise, Caspian rejected the fortune, demanding instead a 3-month contract as her bodyguard. He began his tenure by ruthlessly dismantling a second attack by Damian Jones right in Chloe's office, uncovering that her previous head of security was a traitor in the Jones family's pocket. Despite his heroics, Chloe remained deeply suspicious, noting that Caspian's background was a complete blank on paper, a man who legally did not exist. To determine if he was a genuine savior or a sophisticated plant, Chloe invited him into her private office for a test, using psychological games and physical proximity to probe his defenses. As the shadow of the Jones family's 3-day ultimatum loomed over the company, Caspian and Chloe found themselves caught in a dangerous game of trust and desire, where one wrong move could cost them the miracle drug and their lives. The air inside Chloe's executive office was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the underlying metallic tang of adrenaline. Caspian stood perfectly still, his eyes tracking every slight movement Chloe made as she approached him with a bottle of antiseptic. The test had begun. Chloe's fingers were cool against the heated skin of his hand as she pretended to tend to the scratch they received during the fight with Damian's man. She leaned in closer than necessary, her breath hitching slightly, looking for a crack in his stoic demeanor. Caspian could feel the weight of her gaze. Caspian's mind flashed back to the training he had received in the Special Forces, the lessons on resisting interrogation and psychological manipulation. He knew that Chloe was trying to find his trigger, the piece of information or the emotional reaction that would explain why a man of his caliber would work for a 3-month security contract instead of $1 million. He remained a statue, his heartbeat steady even as her touch lingered on his palm. He looked at the high-tech surroundings of the Storm Pharmaceuticals headquarters, realizing that this wasn't just a corporate office. It was a fortress of innovation that he was now sworn to protect. Chloe was more than just a CEO. She was the guardian of a hope that millions of dying people were praying for. Protecting her wasn't just about his parents' truth anymore. It was about ensuring that Dana reached the world. But to do that, he had to survive her scrutiny first. Iris Brooks, Chloe's younger sister, watched from the doorway with a mixture of amusement and genuine concern. She had seen her sister dismantle the most powerful businessman in the country with nothing but a sharp tongue and a spreadsheet. But she had never seen Chloe look at a man with such raw, unfiltered curiosity. Iris knew the weight of the Storm Pharmaceuticals' legacy. Their father had sacrificed everything to build this company, and Dana was his dying wish made manifest. She also knew that the Jones family wouldn't stop at physical threats. They were masters of character assassination and legal sabotage. Iris stepped into the room, breaking the spell between Caspian and Chloe. "Sis, the legal team is panicking about Damian's ultimatum. They say he's already moving to freeze our manufacturing assets." Chloe pulled her hand away from Caspian, the professional mask snapping back into place instantly. The test was over for now, but the war had only just begun. The Jones family empire was built on the ruins of their competitors, a dark mirror to the innovation of the Brooks family. Damian Jones sat in his father's leather-bound study, his face still bruised from Caspian's assault. He wasn't just angry, he was humiliated. In his world, money bought everything: loyalty, silence, and even love. The fact that a plebeian security guard had thrown him like a ragdoll was an insult that could only be washed away with the total destruction of Storm Pharmaceuticals. His father, the patriarch of the Jones clan, looked at him with a disappointment that was sharper than any blade. "You let a ghost beat you, Damian. Caspian Williams doesn't exist in any database. Do you know what that means? It means he is the kind of man the government uses when they want a problem to disappear forever." Damian ignored the warning, his mind focused on the 3-day clock he had set. He wanted Dana, and he wanted to see the Brooks sisters begging for mercy at his feet. Caspian spent the night conducting his own audit of the Storm security protocols. He moved through the building like a phantom, testing every sensor and interviewing every guard. He realized that the corruption went deeper than just the previous head of security. The Jones family had seeds of influence in every department, from the lab technicians to the janitorial staff. He needed a team he could trust. But in this environment, trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. He retreated to the surveillance room, staring at the monitors that displayed the various floors of the massive complex. He felt the phantom weight of the West Bay drive in his pocket, a constant reminder of the prize waiting for him at the end of this 3 months purgatory. Who were his parents? Why was their truth so dangerous that it required a suicide mission to protect the pharmaceutical queen? The answers were closer than ever, yet they felt worlds away. The second day of the mission began with a high-stakes board meeting. Chloe stood at the head of the mahogany table, her eyes scanning the faces of the investors who were beginning to waver under the Jones family's pressure. "Dana is not just a product," she declared, her voice echoing with a conviction that made Caspian stand a little straighter at the back of the room. "It is a human right. If we sell to the Jones family, they will hide it behind a paywall that only the elite can afford. We will not let them turn a miracle into a monopoly." Caspian noticed one board member, a man named Henderson, who kept checking his phone under the table. Using a miniaturized signal interceptor he'd hidden in his sleeve, Caspian intercepted a message: "She's not budging. Initiate phase 2 at the gala tonight." Caspian didn't flinch. He simply made a mental note to keep Chloe away from the champagne. As the meeting adjourned, Caspian intercepted Chloe in the hallway. "We're changing the plan for the gala tonight," he sighed, his tone leaving no more room for argument. Chloe bristled, her autonomy being challenged for the first time in years. "I am the CEO, Caspian. You decide the schedule." Caspian stepped into her personal space, his shadow looming over her. "And I am the one who keeps you alive. You have a traitor on your board. And Damian Jones is planning something more permanent than a business merger for tonight. You can either follow my lead or you can be the headline of tomorrow's obituary. Which will it be, Miss Brooks?" Chloe looked into his eyes, searching for the desperate man she thought she had met. Instead, she found a commander, For the first time in her life, she felt a strange sense of relief in letting someone else take control. Fine, what do you need me to do? The gala was held at the city's historic museum, a grand setting of marble pillars and ancient artifacts that felt like a tomb for the living. Caspian had replaced the entire catering staff with a private tactical team he borrowed from his old unit men who owed him their lives and didn't care about corporate politics. He wore a tuxedo that hid the tactical gear strapped to his torso, looking every bit the high society gentleman. Chloe arrived in a gown of midnight blue, looking like a goddess of science amidst the vultures of the elite. As they entered the ballroom, the whispers began. The magnificent bodyguard was no more longer a secret. Caspian kept his hand on the small of Chloe's back, his senses dialed to the maximum. He could feel the eyes of the Jones assassins in the crowd, waiting for the moment when the lights would dim. The tension reached a boiling point during Chloe's keynote speech, as she spoke of the 99% recovery rate. A red laser dot appeared on the podium, dancing toward her chest. Caspian didn't shout. He moved. In a blur of motion that defied the laws of physics, he tackled Chloe off the stage just as a silenced round shattered the teleprompter. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Caspian's tactical team sprang into action, neutralizing the gunmen hidden in the rafters before they could fire a second shot. In the darkness, Caspian held Chloe tight against the floor, his body acting as a human shield. Stay down, he whispered, his voice calm amidst the screaming and the crashing of glass. Chloe clutched his lapels, her heart racing against his chest. She realized then that the test was over. This man wasn't just a bodyguard, he was her guardian angel. Outside the museum, Caspian guided Chloe and Iris into a reinforced SOV, the tires screeching as they roared away from the scene. Damian Jones stood on the museum steps, his face contorted in a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He had failed again. Caspian looked at Chloe in the rearview mirror, her face pallid but her eyes full of a newfound determination. They won't stop until they have the formula, will they? She asked. Caspian shook his head. No more, but now they know they have to go through me first, and they don't plan on letting that happen. He drove toward a safe house. They prepared a nondescript warehouse in the industrial district that was fortified with the best technology the black market could provide. The 3-day clock was down to 24 hours. The safe house was a stark contrast to the luxury of the Brooks mansion. It was filled with screens, weapons, and the low hum of cooling fans. Caspian spent the night decoding the message he'd intercepted from the board member. He discovered that the Jones family hadn't just been planning an assassination. They were planning a feral sabotage of the Dana manufacturing facility. If they couldn't own it, they would poison it, turning the miracle drug into a lethal toxin that would ruin the Brooks family reputation forever. Chloe watched him work, mesmerized by the efficiency of his mind. You're more than a soldier, aren't you? She asked, bringing him a cup of coffee. Caspian didn't look up from the screen. I'm a man who's tired of seeing people like the Jones family win. My parents died because they refused to play their game. I'm not going to let history repeat itself with you. The third day dawned with a heavy, gray sky that seemed to weep for the state of the city. Caspian had coordinated a multi-pronged defense. While he stayed with Chloe, his tactical team moved to secure the Storm manufacturing plant. The Jones family launched their final assault at noon, a desperate, high-speed chase through the city streets that looked like something out of a war zone. Caspian drove with a precision that left their pursuers crashing into barricades and spinning out into the harbor. He was a master of the machine, navigating the urban jungle with the same ease as he did the deserts of the Middle East. Chloe sat in the back, gripping the seat, her fear being slowly replaced by an absolute trust in the man behind the wheel. Damian Jones, backed by a private army of mercenaries, breached the lobby, demanding the formula or the lives of everyone in the building. He didn't realize that Caspian had turned the lobby into a tactical kill zone. As Damian stepped through the doors, Caspian appeared on the mezzanine, his silhouette backlit by the afternoon sun. 3 days are up, Damian, Caspian sighed, his voice projecting through the building's intercom. The only thing getting bankrupted today is your ego. Caspian's team descended from the ceiling, a synchronized strike that took out the mercenaries in under 60 seconds. Caspian himself dropped from the mezzanine, landing in front of Damien with a thud that echoed through the hall. The fight between Caspian and Damien was not a contest. It was an execution of skill. Damien swung wildly, his movements fueled by a lifetime of privilege and unearned confidence. Caspian moved like water, parrying every blow and striking with a precision that left Damien gasping for air. With a final, devastating kick to the chest, Caspian sent Damien crashing into the glass-walled display of the Dana prototype. The glass shattered, showering the Jones heir in the shards of the miracle he had tried to steal. Caspian stood over him, his face an unreadable mask of justice. "You're done, Jones. The evidence of your sabotage and your assassination attempts has already been sent to the Federal Bureau. Storm Pharmaceuticals is under my protection now." As the police led Damien away in handcuffs, Chloe stepped out of the elevator, her eyes searching for Caspian. She found him standing in the middle of the wreckage, his hands slightly bloodied but his posture as straight as an arrow. She walked up to him, ignoring the cameras and the frantic staff. She didn't say a word. She simply pulled him into a fierce embrace, her face buried in his shoulder. Caspian felt the tension in his body finally begin to drain away. He had done it. The mission was a success. But as he looked at Chloe, he realized that the 3-month contract was going to be the most difficult assignment of his life. Not because of the danger, but because of the heart he had accidentally rediscovered in the process. The weeks that followed were a period of intense healing and rebuilding for Storm Pharmaceuticals. With the Jones family neutralized and the board of directors purged of traitors, Chloe was able to finally launch Dana to the public. The recovery rates were exactly as promised, and the Brooks name became a global symbol of hope. Caspian remained her head of security, but the relationship had evolved into something much deeper than employer and employee. They spent their evenings on the balcony of the Storm headquarters, looking out at the city they had saved. Chloe would often ask him about his parents, and Caspian would tell her what little he knew, his voice soft in the twilight. The password to the USB drive was finally revealed to Caspian by his superior officer on the final day of his 3-month contract. The word was Diana. Caspian sat in his office, his hands trembling as he typed the letters into the prompt. The files opened, revealing a history that shattered everything he thought he knew. His parents hadn't just been victims of the Jones family. They had been the original scientists who discovered the precursor to the Dana formula. They had been murdered not because they were in the way, but because they refused to let a pharmaceutical conglomerate weaponize their miracle. The Brooks family hadn't stolen the formula. They had been the ones who rescued it from the ashes of his parents' lab. The realization that his entire mission had been a full-circle journey of justice left Caspian in a state of profound shock. He realized that by protecting Chloe, he had been protecting his parents' legacy all along. He walked into Chloe's office, the USB drive in his hand. He told her everything, the truth about his parents, the connection to Storm Pharmaceuticals, and the reason he had taken the job. Chloe listened with tears in her eyes, realizing that her magnificent bodyguard was the son of the people her father had admired most in the world. "You're not just a bodyguard, Caspian," she whispered. "You're the reason this company exists." The narrative concludes with a final image of Caspian and Chloe standing at the memorial site of his parents' laboratory. They had rebuilt the facility as a research center for rare diseases, a place where innovation was guided by ethics and compassion. Caspian was no more longer a man without a record. He was a man with a legacy. He looked at the inscription on the wall, which bore his parents' names and the word hope. He took Chloe's hand, his grip warm and steady. The war was over, the mystery was solved, and the magnificent bodyguard had finally found his way home. The internal architecture of the new research center was a marvel of glass and steel, designed to allow natural light to flood every corridor, a stark contrast to the dark, windowless rooms where Caspian had spent so much of his professional life. He walked through the halls with a sense of ownership he had never felt before. He wasn't just patrolling the premises. He was walking through the manifestation of his family's spirit. Every scientist who passed him gave a respectful nod, knowing that the man in the suit was the reason they were able to work without fear. Caspian realized that his true power wasn't in his ability to take a life, but in his commitment to protecting the lives that were dedicated to saving others. He had transitioned from a weapon of war into a shield of peace. Chloe's role as the CEO of Storm Pharmaceuticals expanded into global health advocacy. She became a frequent speaker at international summits, using the success of Dana to push for more equitable access to life-saving medications. Caspian was always at her side, his presence a silent but formidable deterrent to any who thought they could intimidate the woman who was changing the world. They were a power couple in every sense of the word, one the brilliant mind, the other the unbreakable spirit. Behind closed doors, their relationship was a sanctuary of vulnerability. Chloe taught Caspian that it was okay to have a past that hurt, as long as he had a future that mattered. He taught her that even the strongest queen needs a place to rest her crown. Iris Brooks eventually took over the day-to-day operations of the manufacturing division, proving that she was more than just the energetic sister. She had inherited her father's eye for detail and her sister's iron will. She often joked that having Caspian as a brother-in-law was like having a personal superhero on call 24/7. She ensured that the Dana formula remained the most guarded secret in the world, implementing security protocols that even Caspian found impressive. The Brooks family was no more longer a target. They were a fortress, held together by blood, science, and the loyalty of a man who had seen the worst of the world and chosen to build something better. The Jones family empire collapsed under the weight of the federal investigations. Damien was sentenced to 20 years for attempted murder and corporate sabotage, while his father spent his final days in a grey prison cell, watching the Brooks family rise to heights he could never reach. The poetic justice wasn't lost on the city. The family that tried to hoard a miracle was destroyed by the very woman they tried to break. Caspian visited Damien once before his sentencing. He didn't say a word. He simply looked at the man through the glass partition, his eyes full of a chilling pity. Damien screamed and lashed out, but Caspian just walked away, the sound of his footsteps echoing the finality of the Jones family's fall. The anniversary of the gala incident became a day of reflection for the entire city. A ceremony was held at the museum to honor the tactical team and the first responders who had prevented a massacre. Caspian was the guest of honor, but he refused to accept any medals. He stood at the back of the room, watching Chloe give a speech about the resilience of the human heart. He realized that the magnificent bodyguard was a title given to him by others, but the only title that mattered to him was Caspian. He had outplayed his enemies, outlasted his skeptics, and outlived the shadows of his past. He was a man who had finally found his identity not in a database, but in the eyes of the woman he loved. As the years passed, the legend of Caspian and Chloe grew into a modern fairy tale of power and protection. They had 3 children, each raised with the values of integrity and courage. Caspian taught them how to defend themselves, but more importantly, he taught them why it was necessary to protect the weak. Chloe taught them the beauty of science and the responsibility of knowledge. Their home was a place of laughter and light, a world away from the cold marble of the Brooks mansion. Caspian would often look at his children and think of his own parents. Knowing that the circle of violence had finally been broken, replaced by a legacy of love that would sustain generations. The narrative concludes with a final look at the city skyline at night. The Storm Pharmaceuticals building glows with a steady, brilliant light, a beacon for all who are searching for hope. In the penthouse office, the silhouettes can be seen standing by the window, looking out at the world they have helped to heal. They are 2 souls who found their home in each other, and they stayed together until the dawn. The bodyguard and the queen, the soldier and the scientist, they are the architects of a new era, and their story is a testament to the fact that the most magnificent thing in the world is a heart that refuses to be broken. The internal peace Caspian found was not a static thing, but a garden he tended every day. He realized that by refusing to let his parents' shadow consume him, he had allowed Chloe's light to grow even brighter. He often imagined what his life would have been like if he had never taken that final mission. He would likely still be a ghost in the shadows, or worse, another casualty of a war that had no more meaning. The thought filled him with a profound sense of gratitude for the courage he had found in that hospital fitting room. No, the hotel lounge. He had outplayed his own fear, outlasted his own grief, and outlived the memory of the man who had failed him. He was Caspian, and he was enough. The narrative's resonance was particularly felt in the legal community. Caspian's work led to the Williams Protocol, a set of laws that provided legal protections for whistleblowers in the pharmaceutical industry and regulated the ethics of clinical trials. The protocol was adopted by dozens of countries, a global standard for the rights of the invisible scientists who work behind the scenes. Chloe watched the news of the protocol's passage with a quiet satisfaction, realizing that her husband's struggle and her father's dream had ultimately led to a more just world for millions of people. She was no more longer just the CEO of a company. She was the architect of a movement. As she entered her 80s, Chloe spent more time in the research center's garden, a quiet place filled with jasmine and white roses. She would sit there with her great-grandchildren, teaching them the names of the plants and the stories of the people she had met in her travels. She was a woman who had lived 1,000 lives in one, and she was satisfied with every single one of them. She looked at her hands that had worked in labs, hands that had signed the contracts for a global empire, and hands that had held a magnificent bodyguard in the dark. They were strong, elegant, and perfect. She was Chloe, and she was home. The legacy of the magnificent bodyguard lived on through the children of the scholars and patients they had helped. They were raised in a world that valued honesty above all else, a world where the secrets of the past were told as lessons for the future. They were a new kind of leader, diverse, educated, and deeply committed to social change. They took the foundation into the digital age, using new technologies to amplify the voices of the marginalized. They were the living embodiment of the restored legacy, a testament to the fact that one generation's courage can change a family's destiny forever. The final analysis of the Caspian and Chloe saga is a celebration of the human spirit. It is a story of how one man's refusal to be a tool turned a nightmare into a movement. It proves that the best way to say goodbye to a past that isn't yours is to say yes to a future that is. Caspian had moved on, and in doing so, he had carried the world with him. The game was won, the light was absolute, and Caspian was finally perfectly free. The camera fades to a wide shot of the Storm Pharmaceuticals headquarters at night, a beacon of light in the city skyline, where the rooms are full of hope and the masters are those who lead with love. The relationship between Caspian and Chloe remained a study in contrasts. Damien spent his final days in a grey prison cell, his only company the memories of a privilege he had never earned. Caspian, meanwhile, was surrounded by a family of his own choosing and a world that respected his name. Damien had tried to use his wealth to crush Caspian, but Caspian had used his own heart to rise above him. The heir had become a pauper of the spirit, and the guard had become a hero. It was a final, graceful closure to the conflict that had started in a hotel lounge decades ago. Caspian Williams passed away peacefully on a summer evening, his hand in Chloe's just as it had been on the day they reunited at the museum. The entire nation mourned the loss of a man who had been a miracle of combat and a gentleman of peace. But for Chloe, the silence of their home was the only thing that mattered. She stayed in their house, surrounded by the memories of the man who had redefined her world. She was not afraid of the future, for she knew that the life they had built would sustain her until they were reunited. The bodyguard was gone, but his honor remained the law of the land. The internal architecture of the new mansion was eventually dedicated to Caspian Williams, but the most prominent feature wasn't a statue. It was a library filled with books on ethics and human rights. The inscription at the entrance read, "To the man who was born in the shadows but lived with a soul." It was a permanent reminder to every visitor that true identity is not a matter of birth, but a matter of will. Chloe attended the opening, looking at the portraits of her life and feeling a profound sense of completeness. She had outplayed fate, and she had won the only game that matters. Caspian's children, now senior executives in the foundation, often tell their recruits the story of the SB drive. They teach them that loyalty is an act of service, not a privilege of status. They show them the photo of the gala and tell them that the most important weapon in their arsenal is their integrity. They are the living legacy of two people who were brave enough to love in a world of betrayal. They are the future of the Williams name, a name that now stands for transparency and heart. The cycle of secrets is complete, and the Jones monster is forgotten, replaced by the legend of the guard and the queen. The narrative concludes with a final image of the research center garden at dawn. The sun is rising over the statue of the two scientists, a brilliant orb of light that reflects off the brand's surface in a shimmering path. Chloe stands in the garden, looking at the horizon, her hair white and her face lined with a lifetime of experience. The final image is a slow fade to black, leaving the audience with the enduring image of two hands clasped together, one scarred by the past, the other strengthened by the present. It is a symbol of a love that refused to die, a love that turned a biological weapon into a blessing. The story of Caspian and Chloe is a gift to the world, a reminder that the dawn is always coming for those who hold on to their truth. We are finished. The visual memory of Damian Jones fading into the background of Caspian's life becomes absolute. We are left with the echoing footsteps of a man who realized that his power was never something to be given away. Caspian's transformation from a betrayed soldier to a visionary leader remains a beacon for anyone trapped in a toxic narrative. He proved that the most hardened circumstances can be softened by a single, bold decision to say no more to a lie. His life became a lighthouse for others lost in the storm of emotional manipulation, showing them that there is always a path back to dignity. The story of the Dana takeover became a part of the city's cultural fabric, often referenced in songs and stories about the unexpected nature of fate. It was a reminder that the smallest actions, a decision to buy a toy, a decision to help a woman in need, can have ripples that change the course of history. People would often walk past the headquarters and feel a sense of hope, a reminder that even in the most competitive and cold environments, there is the potential for something beautiful to be restored. The company was no longer a symbol of greed, but a symbol of redemption. As we look back on the full 60-minute journey, we realize that the magnificent Bodyguard narrative is more than just a thriller. It's a philosophical inquiry into the nature of worth. It challenges us to look at the people around us with new eyes, to see the king in the guard and the hero in the victim. It is a call to action to be the Caspian in someone's story, the ally who stands up when it matters most. And it is a reminder to be the Chloe in our own lives, the person who refuses to be outplayed by a lie. The Brooks Williams legacy is a permanent mark on the world, a testament to the fact that we are all interconnected. Our choices matter, our voices matter, and our love matters. Caspian and Chloe proved that even in a world of billionaires and corporate giants, the only true power is the power of the heart. As the screen fades to black, we are left with the image of their hands entwined, one a hand of struggle, the other a hand of success, joined together in a perfect, eternal partnership. Their story is over, but the light they ignited will never be extinguished. The city skyline at night now features the Storm Pharmaceuticals building as its centerpiece, its windows glowing with a soft, steady light. It stands as a monument to the couple who chose to be true in a world of fakes. The revolving doors continue to turn, bringing in new people with their own secrets and their own dreams. And somewhere, in the hum of the corporate ambition and the clicking of heels on the marble floors, the spirit of Caspian and Chloe remains a reminder that justice is always worth the fight, and that the best stories are the ones that start with a single, bold decision to speak the truth. The transition from the boardroom to the domestic bliss of their later years was a serene and fulfilling chapter for Caspian and Chloe. They spent their mornings in the library, Caspian writing his reflections on tactical ethics and Chloe managing the foundation's medical grants. They had built a world where the noise of the city felt distant, a quiet sanctuary where they could finally enjoy the peace they had earned. Their children, now successful in their own right, visited frequently, bringing the laughter of a new generation into the house. Chloe looked at her life and realized that every decision, even the night at the hotel, had led her to this moment of absolute contentment. Caspian's devotion to Chloe never wavered. Even as the decades added lines to his face and silver to his hair, he was her silent guardian, the man who had outbid the world to give her the life she had always deserved. He realized that his greatest achievement wasn't his combat record, but the trust and love of the woman who had walked into his life and changed his world. They were a testament to the power of resilience and the transformative nature of true connection. The Guard had become the partner in the only way that mattered. The Brooks and Williams Foundation continued to flourish under the leadership of their eldest daughter, who possessed Chloe's fierce spirit and Caspian's strategic mind. The foundation had become a global leader in social ethics, influencing policies in dozens of countries. Chloe's influence was felt in every program, a persistent voice for the vulnerable that could not be silenced. She had turned her private pain into a public healing, a transformation that made every second of her struggle worth the cost. The name remained a beacon of hope for millions. The story of the Dana discovery became a case study in universities and business schools, not for its drama, but for its lessons in corporate social responsibility and ethical leadership. Caspian's memoir, The Shield of Peace, became an international bestseller, inspiring a new generation of leaders to know their worth and stand up for their dignity. He was no longer just a magnificent bodyguard or a secret soldier, he was a global icon of empowerment. His face was a symbol of the strength that comes from truth, a man who had walked through the fire and come out on the other side with a heart of gold. Even in his 90s, Caspian's energy was seemingly boundless. He remained active in the foundation, often visiting the clinics and schools he had helped build. He would sit with the people and listen to their stories, his eyes full of the same empathy that had saved his own soul. He was the patriarch of a new kind of dynasty, one built on character, not just capital. He was a man who had lived 1,000 lives in one, and he was satisfied with every single one of them. He knew that his legacy wasn't the buildings or the money, but the lives he had changed. When Caspian eventually passed away, he died peacefully in his sleep, his final gaze fixed on the woman who had redefined his world. The city went into a week of mourning, but for Chloe, the silence of the mansion was the only thing that mattered. She stayed in their home, surrounded by the memories of the man who had loved her so deeply. She was not afraid of the future, for she knew that the love they had built would sustain her until they were reunited. The magnificent bodyguard was gone, but his honor remained the law of the land. Chloe lived for several more years, a beloved figure in the city and a guiding light for her family. She saw her grandchildren grow into compassionate adults, and she saw the foundation reach new heights of global impact. She was at peace with her past, realizing that every shadow had been necessary to find the light. When her time finally came, she passed away with a smile on her face, her final gaze fixed on the inscription in the garden, a symbol of the journey that had finally carried her home. The queen is at rest.